can help hold their emotions. You know, if you have so much anger towards somebody that you've never been allowed to let out, let's say anger towards your parents, I will hold some of that for you, right? I will get angry on your behalf. I will tell you that what happened was fucked up, even if you've never been allowed to tell yourself what happened was fucked up, right? Because you might go to a therapist and be like, oh, my childhood was great, but then like one time my dad broke my arm when he was pissed at me. And I'd be like, you know, that's not normal, right? Like, that's my job, is to just be unbiased, versus one of your friends might say, well, if you were being an asshole, your dad should have broke your arm, right? And it's like, hold on, you know? So that's why I get you're intimidated by therapy, but like, or anybody, any man would be, because men most often perceive therapy as, we're going to dig dark, deep, like dig deep into your dark things that you don't want to talk about. No therapist is going to make you talk about things you don't want to talk about, especially not when you're first meeting. So you show up and you define what you want to benefit from. What I ask my patients to do when they first meet me and they want to engage in therapy is, tell me about all the roles you play in your life. You are a father, you're a coworker, you're a husband, you're a friend. And what do you think you're doing well in those roles? And what would you like to work on? What are your areas for improvement? So in no way did I ask that person to tell me all their big, bad, scary stuff. Now, if we're really going to try and understand why, which is what scares so many men off, they don't want to talk about the why. They don't want to reflect on those bad things that have happened because they're scared. Aseko, I know that might not be the language men like to use, but they're scared. We could say they don't see the value, but that's because society has told them there's no value. Not that they don't, like, you know, I would be a good example. Initially, I would have said, why do I need to do that? Well, it's because nobody fucking told me it was an option. It was never on the table. So what I tell men is, no one's going to ask you to talk about all these mommy or daddy issues you have until you're ready to talk about them. And then you meet somebody for, 4 to 6 sessions and you're talking about your job and your marriage and your kids. And then eventually you go, yeah, man, it was just like my fucking dad did to me. And it's like, oh, why don't you tell me a little more about that? Like, it's not like I bring that, I don't ask people to tell me how bad it was. I wait for them to be like, right, I'm just not trying to fuck my kid up like my dad did to me. And then we go, okay, you were ready to go there? Let's do it, baby boy. So that's like how I would treat men in therapy. And some come ready to talk, which is awesome. Others are still fighting you tooth and nail even when they show up, So I don't even know if I answered the question, but I do think, Aseko, this is also what's so interesting is like, I think you'd really like my podcast because the whole idea, the first episode starts with, I have a bunch of men, voice clips, and then we switch to video in the second episode. So it's all video, my podcast. It's why would we go to therapy? Why, and what stops us? How do we seek the benefit? The second episode, I have 3 women on to talk about what they would like their men to be working on in terms of their relationships. And we very quickly flip the script, Aseko, to say, this could go both ways. Both men and women need to be working on things. We understand that. I just pitch things towards men because that's my experience. That's what I feel comfortable sharing. Now, I've worked with thousands of women, those in violent relationships, whatever, any of that stuff. And so I, as best as I can, understand the female point of view. I just don't try to pretend like I'm an expert in it because I didn't live it. So my audience is still like 35% women who listen. So there must be something that this is doing for everybody, where my goal is taking therapy, demystifying it, explaining what the point is. Each episode we focus on like how to express our emotions, how to conquer our fears, how to regulate our emotions when we're feeling distressed. So I'm focusing on those things, but I'm also referencing sports, pop culture, movies and music and TV, I'm remembering people from the past who set good examples for us. So I kind of wrap it all up in like playful bro culture. But like we're doing I'm teaching you therapy. So that's what I've had dozens and dozens of people since we started be like, this was the push I needed to go to therapy. Thank you for making this not sound so scary. Thank you for, and it's just like, hell yeah, man. Because it was scary for me too. And I don't quite know what I was scared of, but I'm sure if you'd asked me 6 years ago, I could have given you a laundry list of shit that I was scared of facing, and it's like, it's nice that I'm not really scared to talk about any of that stuff anymore, but it's hard fucking work, man. Hard work.
Definitely. And I feel like when you spoke about actually having an audience of women, 35% listening to your content, whereas most of the time it's based on men. And it took me back when I had a conversation with Christelle DeSantis, whereas she wrote a book called Strong, a relationship guide for modern men. And to me, it was something different. Writing a book about men while you are a female, a woman, and that really threw me off. But whereas we got into the conversation, I really understood how do women actually view men. And also she is a psychotherapist. She is a psychotherapist and really enjoyed the conversation around that thing. And that I just
looked up her book. Sorry, that's what I'm just looking a little bit just in terms of who you're talking about. But no, I mean like a lot of good, really good sound feminist writers have commented on men over time. Have you read anything by Bell Hooks? Do you know her name? She was a big name past in the early 2000s, but a lot of her stuff on masculinity has been formative for me because what it does is it doesn't really separate men and women in terms of how the culture raised us, especially in America. The message is the same. We were all raised in the same culture. So the idea that men and women weren't both impacted by the patriarchal norms, and I would go on to say like capitalism in America, Christianity is the main faith, right? Like there is a mainstream culture in America that has bred us all in a certain way. So that's like funny that you're like, right, the female point of view on men. Well, I think any emotionally attuned man could also understand the plight of women and what it's been like to be female in America. I've worked my fucking ass off too, and I still have to have people remind me, I've read dozens of books and I'll work with thousands of women, and sometimes I still go, fuck, yeah, that sucks. And I haven't had to deal with that because I'm male. And a good emotionally attuned woman should be able to step outside of whatever bullshit men have put her through in her life and go, well, let me tell you, it wasn't really easy for men either, because I watched my dad beat the fucking shit out of my brother because he needed to be a man, right? He needed to be tough and he needed to stand up for himself. So I taught him, I took the belt and I whipped the shit out of it. And so I don't think it's all that, right? It's not all that different. It's just that's like on my show, I'm not trying to like deny the fact that there are men and women and that they have differences and biological differences. I mean, I'm a scientist, but the roles that we all play now have been built for hundreds of years around fitting a certain mold. And in America, that mold is kind of to train you to go to war. That's generally speaking what the culture is meant to do. So, and the women, right, as a result, are meant to be good supporters of their men.
Yeah.
That's generally what we're taught. Now, we're pushing back on that. I don't want to alarm anybody or say that there hasn't been progress, but the progress has been like, oh, this is a problem, huh? I don't know that we've done all that much about it yet. And we have, right? I don't want to insult individual people and organizations that are doing a great job, investing in child mental health, investing in schools, investing in domestic violence resources. All that stuff is great. But as a culture and a society, we haven't shifted really in terms of what's important and what our values are in America. So I just think we'd be lying to ourselves if we'd say that we have, because we have so much work to do that I don't think we need to be sad about that. I think we just need to stare it down the barrel and get fucking work. So I'm ready. I'm trying to get to work. You are too, you know?
Definitely,
and so
definitely.
yeah. There's so many people who feel like this world is like lost. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go down swinging. Like, I don't know about the rest of you, but like, I'm still trying. So it's hard though. It's hard.
It goes back to self-advocacy. It really goes back to self-advocacy.
I just did this on my last episode. Yeah, no, go ahead. It's all, everything goes back to self-advocacy. Everything.
Yes. And also, like, I just wanna, in terms of our final point, and actually I'm seeing the time almost out of time. And actually, I would just want to speak about in terms of masculinity. And you spoke about,
one more time. You said, repeat your words for me.
Masculinity. It's something that I feel like there have been conversations about it, and people have different views about it. As you said, that in terms of feminists, there are different feminists that actually touch on masculinity in a positive way. And whereas others say there's this thing called toxic masculinity. And
right,
as us as men, probably I'm part of those men that actually defend ourselves in terms of, if there's toxic masculinity, so that means there's toxic femininity. And whereas you hear a lot of uproar and saying that, no, women are always right, things like that. So what's in terms of, what is your take on that in terms of when people reference to toxic femininity?
I don't claim to be an expert on the waves of feminism and the nuances. So, and I won't hear. So here, everyone hear me. What I'm saying is really stuff that I've just kind of picked up secondhand. Is I view either masculinity or femininity as toxic when they stop including the other gender in their consideration as partners in this problem and fixing it. So we all know that in the 60s and 70s, the first, I don't know, there's different terms for waves of feminism, so I will not use, but there was the wave of feminism that basically said, we want to take the men, bury them underground, milk their semen, and fuck them, right? And so not actually have sex with them, but fuck them, get out of our face. And so that obviously is toxic because it's not realistic. Nor is toxic masculinity, which is I'm going to be the big bad man provider and my wife's going to stay home and raise the kids and suck my dick and all this shit. That's bad too, because you're not seeing her as an equal partner. You're not seeing her as a part of the solution, which to the problem, which is, you hinted at this earlier, mental health outcomes for people of both genders are fucking bad. And so if either of these genders think that they have the answer alone, they're wrong, because inevitably there is no solution that does not include both genders. And by both gender, gender and sexuality on a spectrum, what I always tell people is, I don't care what you do in the bedroom or how you dress, just don't be an asshole. And so that's always my thing with it. So when I say men, women, I just mean that's when I feel things are toxic, is when you take a whole group and you bundle them in a certain way. If a woman thinks all men are like this, or a man thinks all women should be like this, that's a fucking problem, because it's black and white thinking, and the world is not black and white. Most people in the world see the world as black and white because we're all inherently traumatized and we all don't have emotional skills past age 8 to 10. But the world is not black and white. It's much more complicated than that, Aseko. So we need to be able to see it like that. And again, toxic masculinity and femininity are just poles on this spectrum of we're not all that different. Yes, men have a Y chromosome, women don't. Yes, men have more testosterone versus estrogen, but how we could be operating ourselves is much more in that, like, we're not that different, and we can respect the fact that